Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. It's wonderful to see so many of you here. I was hoping that we would have a good crowd, and we absolutely do. So thank you so much for coming. My name is Steve Pace. I am a member of the League of Women Voters. I'm also, thank you. And guys, I always say, guys, you can join, because I'm a member, so you can too. I'm an attorney at Shuttleworth and Ingersoll. I've done this forum before, and I enjoy doing it. And you all know the rules, and I'll just repeat them, okay? And they are, let's not boo or cheer or clap or that sort of thing, okay? Our legislators know the rules too. They're not going to have any personal attacks or anything like that. We're going to talk about issues today. So the League of Women Voters is a trusted political organization. Members do hands-on work to safeguard democracy. The League is directly involved in shaping the important issues to keep our community strong. All members of the community are invited to join. Persons not eligible to vote are welcome to be associate members. So the League is a sponsor today, but we also have a co-sponsor, the American Association of University Women. They're in the back. Thank them. And the American Association of University Women wants me to say they never give up. They fight for pay equity. They fight for safe campuses, mentoring young women to be leaders, and college students you can join for free. So thank you for them also for sponsoring this, and thank you to Mercy for allowing us to be here. So I want to introduce our legislators now, and there are a number that couldn't be here today or aren't here today, whichever you'd like to say. And I'm not saying which I think it is, but I want to start by thanking those that are here very much. Representative Kirsten Running Marquardt is on your far left. And Senator Horn, I should say, I think maybe his nameplate's up there. He's ill, so he couldn't be here today. Representative Todd Taylor. Representative Art State, and Senator Liz Mathis. Representative Bennett is at an event in Des Moines. Senator Hogue is at an event in Okoboji. Those were planned previously, and they said their regrets. Representative Hinson, Reiser, Louis Zumbaugh, and Senator Dan Zumbaugh are in Marion at a forum for, I think, Lynn County Farm Bureau. So, and we just lost the lights. Oh, that was a coincidence, wasn't it? Well, there we go. Thank you. I guess we're back. So, so I thank you, whoever turned the lights back on. Thank you to Deb Roberts and her team for the arrangements, and again to Mercy Medical Center. Pro Video is live streaming this event, and it will be on their Facebook page. Our league will also tweet the information we have on our Facebook page. This forum is being taped on behalf of MediaCom by IMON and Pro Video. It will be rebroadcast on IMON Channel 6 and MediaCom Channel 18. Neighborhood News is also recording this forum and will be available to view on League of Women Voters, lynncounty.org, and neighborhoodnetworknews.com. And I don't think we have 2, 7, or 9 here. I don't see any of them. We do. Thank you also for coming. All right, so let's get to it. The rules are that we're going to start out, and sometimes we have opening statements and sometimes we don't. I asked that we have opening statements today because I think our legislators probably there's a lot that's happened. They probably have some things they want to tell you, and that way they'll have a chance to do that. Those will be 1.5 minutes each. Then we'll do questions. The responses to the questions will be 1.5 minutes each. We have timers here, and the legislators know that they'll hold up the signs when it's 30 seconds left and stop. And then when they hold up stop, please stop. And if you don't, I'll tell you to stop, okay? Is that fair? All right. Please, again, no clapping. Turn off your cell phones. No cheering or jeering or booing either. Please turn off your cell phones. And at the end, if you want to clap, you can. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Thank you. All right. So without further ado, how about we start at the far end with opening statements? Representative?
Good morning. I'm Kirsten Running Marquardt, State Representative, and just want to sort of say thank you again for all the people who are here today. That it does matter that you're here, and our democracy and participation of the public with elected officials, that really matters. And I very much appreciate the dedication the League of Women Voters have had for that, and I have been here before, and not everybody agrees with me on every topic as well. So I think this is a really good forum, and I just extra appreciate what you do today in light of some of the things that have been in the paper. This has been, the last few weeks have been really rough weeks for middle class workers in the state of Iowa. If you kind of want to know who's winning and who's losing, major corporations across the state of Iowa, they are winning, and working middle class Iowans, not so much. There was one highlight this week. There was a bill that I'd worked on for a while, trying to get ABA coverage, insurance coverage for autism, and that has been several years in the making, and it passed the Iowa House. So I want to end my 15 seconds left. I want to end my introduction with just saying that not everything is horrible. There's some positive things that do happen once in a while, and that bill was a piece of legislation that I'm very proud of and was a positive thing this week. Thank you.
Good morning, State Representative Todd Taylor. It's also, I would echo Kirsten's remarks. It's great to see a great group of people here. You know, obviously the League of Women Voters third Saturday of January, February, March, sometimes in April, has been scheduled for more than a couple decades. And so this is always something that I book on my calendar. I think I've only missed about 3 of them, either being family obligations or being sick, but it's great to be here and have a very large crowd as well. I did notice that, and I do appreciate, after the February forum, the league sent out what I have is 8 and almost a half pages, single space of questions that they sent to us after, if we don't get to all of them. Obviously, the February one, there was great changes in collective bargaining, and we talked about that a lot and how the impact on teachers and public sector folks. And I know, obviously, with fewer legislators here, we'll maybe get through some more questions. This particular last month, we've taken away local control, taken away access to tort reform, or torts for asbestos. They call it tort reform, but really they take away access to injured workers. We did workers' comp yesterday, or 2 days ago, excuse me. And there was also some budget numbers that came out that are abysmal, and we have to put the blame where it belongs, and we'll be talking about that in detail and going into the rainy day fund and why and how they can't cut anymore in courts and corrections, et cetera. So.
Thank you. I'm Representative Art State, and I wanted to thank everybody for being here too. It's great to have participation of the public in what we do and getting all of your input, so appreciate that. And League of Women Voters, wanted to thank them again for having this bipartisan forum for so long. I just feel that we're still headed in the wrong direction. I mentioned that last month, and I just penned out a bunch of things this morning. With coffee, I had 2 categories. One was the real problems that we're facing in the state and should be working on, trying to find solutions for, and then the imaginary fake problems that we've been working on for the last month. So if I have maybe a little additional time, I just want to read from my list. The real problems that we have, we didn't have enough funding for our school systems. We had cuts to the community colleges and our universities. We have a preschool program that only half the students can take advantage of because we don't fully fund it. Our Iowa teacher pay now is going down again, dropping. Our 3rd grade reading program has not been funded with the reading monies that we promised. We promised for the summer and for remediating reading problems, and we're not funding that. We have assessments now in our schools that are not funded, another mandate. The pay for nurses in the state of Iowa is dead last. We have a shortage of direct care workers. Iowa is last in mental health treatment beds. We're short 100 troopers. We're short 100 prison guards. Our waterways are among the most impaired in the nation. We still have problems with nutrient runoff. We're underfunding our justice system and causing closures there. We have done nothing for medical cannabis, no leadership on that. The MCOs now still have no effective oversight or control, and our budget is in a mess. So, what are we doing? We're dealing with what they called a broken workers' compensation plan, which had no problems whatsoever. We're looking at school choice crisis, where families don't have a choice in their schools. We had to do a 12-point gun rights program because people didn't have enough gun rights. We scrapped collective bargaining. We passed a voter ID law for voter impersonation, and we've never even had a case. Defunding women's health services, dismantling the Des Moines Water Works, preempting minimum wage, and we had to remove licenses, or try to remove licenses from therapists, social workers, and others. We're planning on scrapping the bottle bill, and people are getting too high awards for asbestos health problems.
Thank you,
the scenario.
Representative
Thank you.
State, and we're going to cover in questions a lot of the things that you just brought up, so thank you very much. Senator Mathis.
Yes, thanks, and thank you all. Again, I reiterate what my colleagues have said. Thank you all for being there. Can I have a show of hands to the people that are in the League of Women Voters? Thank you. All right, and a little plug for the League. It is a nonpartisan group, and you can sign up. Men and women can sign up for the League and take an active role in discussing, legislative topics and national and statewide and local. So I would encourage you to do that. I serve in the Senate, and my colleagues in the House, and we work together on a lot of things and a lot of amendments. So things like during the debate for collective bargaining, which lasted nearly 40 hours, we worked overnight. We created about 80 amendments to try to slow the bill down so that school districts could sign their contracts. Because we knew that as the minority, they weren't going to pick up any amendments, but we did try some tactics to try to just stay on the floor so that the governor would have a shorter period of time to sign the bill. So those kinds of things do happen. It's political, and it's becoming even more political. I can't imagine, from your perspective, how difficult this is. You're watching national news and you're watching state news, and it probably feels overwhelming to you. So today, we'll try to highlight some of the things that we feel are important for you to look at, and possibly ways, at least I will, I think my colleagues will too, ways that you can be vocal about it and speak up and try to change the minds of other legislators.
All right, thank you so much. And I have a lot of questions here. I'm going to try to group them into categories and then synthesize those and try to ask the questions in groups. The first one I'm going to start with is voter ID, because the League of Women Voters, many of you, their members, know voter ID has been something the League nationally has been involved with and watching. So, and if we could start at this end with Senator Mathis. And there's various questions about voter ID. What does this mean? With declining budget, why are we spending money on it? Why do we change it if it's not broken? The various things of that type. Can you comment on the voter ID law, please?
Sure. The Senate hasn't taken up voter ID yet. The House has. But just remember this. I'm going to go all the way back to the Constitution. Voting is a constitutional right. When you show your ID at a bank or at a store, that's not a constitutional right. That's a policy that a store and a bank have set up. Voting is a constitutional right. I feel that the voter ID law is going to greatly complicate what happens at the polls. I had a long conversation with Joel Miller this week, and when I asked him, do we need the voter ID law? He said, no. And a lot of county auditors all across the state of Iowa feel we don't need the voter ID law. We had a handful of felons try to vote in the last election in Lynn County, and he said that they have information, and when they try to vote, they can refer back, and they have that already to try to block someone from trying to vote if they don't have voting rights. He said there was one imposter 4 years ago, and that's it in Lynn County. So he's looking at the cost of this, and since Representative Reiser passed the voter ID, he led the voter ID law in the House, he took out the appropriation. So it is a policy right now that is unfunded, and the funding will go to the county, and the county supervisors are calling it riser tax because there's no funding for it. So that's a problem.
Thank you. Representative State.
Thank you. Not only is it costly, as we found in some other states, up to $3 million to do what they're planning on doing, there's also no need for it. Question after question was posed to Republicans in the House about the need for this, and there is absolutely no need. We don't have any cases of impersonation of a voter. So there are new ID requirements that people will have to show an ID at the polling place, and the poll watchers can challenge that. If the picture doesn't look like you or the signature isn't quite the same, then you'll have a provisional ballot, which may require you to go in within 3 days of the election, to go in and present other ID to prove that you're a voter. So it's something that's going to disenfranchise a lot of people.
So on the photo voter ID, obviously in final passage, we as legislators, particularly in the minority, we get a chance to vote yes or no. There were a couple provisions in this legislation that was okay, and then several that were really bad. So we don't get a choice to say yes on this one, no on that one. We tried through amendments, but it doesn't really work. I like the idea of having a up-to-date, real-time electronic poll books, but of course there's no money for that. So it's an unfunded mandate, and hence appropriately dubbed the riser tax. And we should point that out in the second largest county. Auditor Miller said that 2/3 of the polls do not have these up-to-date books. I'm all in favor of let's have up-to-date data, sure. But nobody in this room and nobody really in the state is fooled by the fact that this voter photo ID is anything other than disenfranchisement of some people. Not everybody. This isn't going to be a problem for some people. There's certain folks it's going to disenfranchise. One little positive thing that they did was they didn't back up the close the polls at 8 o'clock. They left that at 9 o'clock. Great. But that's one piece of it. There's so much bad, and if you disenfranchise one person, it's too much.
Thank you.
So the way I see this bill, and when it first came before the Iowa House, it really strikes me. I think about first the men and the women who have died for the right to vote, not only in this country, but in other countries. And that's the first thing I go to when I think about this bill. And then, of course, when you think about the people who are going to be disenfranchised, or who it really is a suppression bill for, it is our senior citizens, it is those with disabilities, it is college students, and it is minority populations in the state of Iowa who are greatly affected by this law that they're moving through, or this bill that they're moving through. And it really disgusts me because we don't have a problem, sort of Representative Stade lists through like the solutions in search of a problem, and we have real problems. But this one, I've seen people out there saying, oh, there's these lists, these are all the things you need IDs for. But none of them were sort of sacred rights, sacred constitutional rights. And so we really need to be protecting people in vulnerable populations instead of putting barriers up and then costing the county, and it's gonna cost our county for their voter suppression bill about $300,000.
Thank you. Well, we have lots of questions on other topics here, and I want to move on to workers' compensation. This is, I know it's a big topic, and there's a lot to say about it, but if we could start with Representative Taylor, and then why don't we go this way and back around?
Which way is he going?
Or,
Start with Todd.
okay,
Sure.
go ahead.
On the Labor Committee.
That's fine, yes, I appreciate that, and, yes, I'm on the Labor Committee, however, this bill did not go through the Labor Committee, it went through Commerce, and minimum wage went through a different committee too.
Went to local.
Well, local government. Anyhow, workers' compensation, it's a 104-year-old law, it's not broken. There are some things that they've made some changes, and then they tweaked it a little bit so that they could say, the Republican majority could say, hey, we listened, we had a public hearing and we listened. But it's really sad that that's their mantra, that they say they listened, because they're not here today to defend it, number one, and number two is the things that they are changing are significant in the lives of working Iowans. And this isn't really a union issue, although they hate unions and it's in their platform to eliminate them. But this will hurt any worker injured on the job, and their ability to seek recovery of those damages is going to be reduced. For what purpose? They say because the system is unbalanced. For example, the shoulder. If a shoulder is injured, it does affect the elbow, the hand, and so on. That's called a body of the whole injury. They tweak that, and a shoulder injury will now be significantly reduced in terms of the compensation. They did tweak the thing on your benefits are cut off at age 67, but there's still an age discrimination aspect to this, because they'll say, well, you're just getting older and that's the reason why your body is deteriorating, and that's just wrong.
Just in addition to that too, the pre-existing conditions cause cutting them down further in reference to benefits, and there are other delays in this bill. I think that's all I've got to say about it. It was just another unnecessary bill to take away some benefits from Iowa workers.
I would encourage all of you to go on the Iowa Legislative website. And if you look at that, if you're pretty active politically, you can look at that every day, and you can see there's right on the home page it says Senate debate calendar, and it says House debate calendar. And then you can see the bills that we're going to be debating, and then you can watch live stream. And I know many of you work, but it is replayed at certain times, and the Iowa Senate Democrats page on Facebook, we usually do a live stream and we replay it so that you can watch it at any time. So with that plug, we've been very fortunate to have a young man by the name of Nick Bolton. He's a new senator this year, and Nate, excuse me, Nate Bolton. He's a new senator this year, and he has been amazing in presenting the Democratic view of this bill. And so not only with collective bargaining did he lead that bill, and he led that into the 80 amendments and the 40 hours of debate, but workers' comp is another bill that he's going to be floor managing for us, for our side. It has so many pieces to it that are just mean. They're just mean-spirited for the worker. They're disrespectful of the worker, how much dedication and loyalty they've put into the job. Just last week at a listening post in Ely, there was a gentleman in the back of the room who walked up to me, was silent during the whole meeting. He walked up to me and he said, I know that we're politically opposite on several things, but I'm here about the workers' comp bill. And I want to tell you my story. And he removed his jacket, and half of his arm was gone. He had caught it in a lathe at a business that he works at, and he'd been working there for a year. He was a military veteran, and he told me his story, and it was just so the example of what would happen to a person like him if he didn't have workers' comp. He's not able to hold anything in his left hand now, and he wants to work. He wants to work. And they've given him another job, but when the door swings open in the office, he can hear the lathe out in the machine shop, and it just kind of sends him into another mind frame. But we have to think of the people who are injured here and, why they're injured. Is there a safety issue? And how can they continue to work? And how can we continue to support them in their work? And so it's a very imbalanced bill right now.
Thank you. Representative Running Marquardt.
It's so unfortunate that we have to do the workers' comp bill. We did the preemption bill. Again, we keep having these extreme bills that come before us in the Iowa House. And when I was door knocking, and I door knocked and visited in my legislative district, we have Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. And they did not say, you go after injured workers in Iowa. You know what, they're a problem. Not once did I get that at the doors. And, I come back home late Thursday night, and I had some meetings yesterday, but my son and my family and some of my friends, everybody's, talking about March Madness. And we're talking about what brackets, and I did pick USC in Middle Tennessee, by the way, in my brackets. I'm doing all right. But I just put that in there for a little laugh because this is such a serious, disappointingly sickening bill here. But instead, the March Madness that when I go to work and when I'm at the Capitol, the March Madness is extreme legislation. They've gone after middle-class, hardworking Iowans, and now they went after injured middle-class, hardworking Iowans. You know who wins in this bill? The meatpacking industry. Yeah. We heard, because especially the shoulder piece, you know why? Because that's in the meatpacking and the poultry industry, the repetitive injuries that they're having that not only wreck their shoulder, but it ends up wrecking their whole body. And so that's why they're reclassifying shoulders. It's because that lobby, that corporation, those are the people that won that day instead of hardworking Iowans who were, unfortunately, their greatest crime was that they showed up, they went to work to make a living for their family, and they got injured on the job. And now this bill does not serve them well and is not a priority of mine. And I hope that someday, I know that a lot of folks are passionate, and we've seen it at the forums, emails, Facebook, Twitter. If any of you are on social media, I am too, so join me. You can contact me there as well. But people are really passionate about these things because it does not reflect accurately Iowans' priorities, and people are done with it. They're sick and tired of it. And it's not Republican or Democrat. Republicans are coming up to me saying, what is going on? Yeah. This is crazy. So this is the true March Madness that, unfortunately, I wish it was more basketballs and, tournament brackets and things like that. But instead, it's extreme legislation that's being pushed down our throats in the Iowa legislature.
Thank you very much. I want to move on to collective bargaining, and I'd like to start with Representative Stade, if I could, and then go that direction and around. There's a number of questions about collective bargaining. What about retirees? There's just lots to say, but could you comment on the collective bargaining bill?
Thank you. If you recall the election of last year in November, I don't remember anyone running on dismantling the collective bargaining for public employees in the state of Iowa. So I would call that bill a wolf in sheep's clothing. They really just stripped all the bargaining rights of public employees, clear down to the only thing that they can really bargain is for their salary, if you remember. And that salary, though, is capped at 3% or at the cost of inflation, whichever is lower. So it's just really, really unbelievable that occurred. And we fought long and hard, I know, in the House and the Senate. Senator Mathis talked about the delays that they were able to do in the Senate so people could actually get their contracts in place. In the House, we were able to debate for 3 days, and we would have continued on and on if they hadn't time certain us and then rolled all of the amendments within about 30 minutes. So that was a real disservice to the people of Iowa. And one of the representatives, if you remember here, said that he did that to save the public school system in Iowa, which is, and I had asked him not to come and save me. So, thank you.
Representative Taylor.
Oh, this way? Okay, sure,
Yeah.
certainly. Well, first of all, unfortunately, this is not a bill. This is a law. And it was passed in record time, from introduction to the governor's signature in a private secret ceremony with private secret donor, Koch brothers representative Drew Klein, and for Americans for Prosperity, in 10 days. And they were hell-bent on getting that thing done before Terry Branstad leaves for China. And they had to get it done, and they did not want to let it go through a weekend where we could come back and talk to the people. So last month when we were here, it had already been signed into law the Friday before. Plenty of bad about it, and there's some, there's absolute unfair built into the system, absolutely unfair. So example, if the unions want to have representation, anybody who doesn't vote is counted as a no vote. That doesn't happen in our elections. It doesn't happen anywhere. So the ability to win a representation election that will be required to be on an annual basis or in the very last year of a contract, maximum year of 2 years, you will end up with people who want it, and then everybody who doesn't vote is the same thing as no vote. I mean, that's just one crazy point. This was on Terry Branstad's bucket list. I remember the AFSCME v. Branstad case in 1992. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and he got crushed in a 9-0 decision. And he's been angry ever since about that.
So workers' comp is probably one of the only labor bills that did move through the labor committee, which I serve on. They're moving them all over the place because they don't want labor to, I guess, deal with it. This law, collective bargaining. Not to reiterate what other legislators have said, but I couldn't be more proud of the legislators that sit up here with me and, Senator Hogue as well, who fought tooth and nail to try to stop or try to slow at least this legislation from moving through the Iowa legislature. What we need to do is to make sure that we're communicating about what this means for everyday Iowans in their lives. What this means when you can't come and talk to your employer in the public sector and have conversations about your working conditions or safety in the job, and what that means. For teachers, that's safety for my child, and for kids, that's what that looks like. That's how that translates. There's a lot of other issues with that. My time is running short here, but there's another issue that's coming. It went through the Senate. I don't think that it's another sort of attack on Iowans in the workplace. Is they're moving through to codify the governor's PLA executive order, which states that project labor agreements are not going to be allowed at the state or the local level. So local, this is another attack on local control, where cities and counties and others can't make decisions about hiring local workers, highly qualified, highly trained workers, which really stimulates our own economy when that happens. There's also a piece in there that takes off they have a questionnaire that if you're gonna bid on a job, here's 10 questions. It's called pre-qualification questionnaire. And they wanna take that out too now, so that even stripping further away sort of basic rights of communities to make sure that people who are actually bidding for large projects, that they are, have good standings in several areas, but that they're not allowed anymore to then be good stewards of taxpayers' money to their full potential. So that's coming. What also is coming, I believe, is people are going to get fed up with this extreme legislation that's moving forward. And I urge you all, either if it's streaming or people here in the crowd today, to make sure you're talking to your friends, your families, your neighbors. That's a tough work. And talk to them about how you feel about the legislation that's going up. Talk about it on your Facebook page. I mean, it's not always easy at holiday dinners, but try to get it in there so that you know what's going on and people understand what's really going on here in the state of Iowa. And I think that gives us hope. The amounts of emails I've gotten, the people who are showing up at this forum, and I bet there's a whole bunch of people showing up at the Marion Forum too today.
Yeah.
And they're speaking to their legislators at the state level and the federal level, saying, you've gone too far. And so we need to, I mean, I'm held accountable often. We need to hold everybody accountable as well to some of these policies that they're proposing
Thank
and
you.
that they're moving through. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
I think what you're seeing nationally, where Trump's budget came out, and such a divide between the haves and the have-nots. And so when we put that on a state scale then, and we look at the nearly 200,000 public employees who have solid jobs, they have good insurance, they have good wages, that's what we are trying to create for the rest of Iowa. So if you look at that core group of public employees, they're actually pulling everybody's wages up. It is solid. They're trained workers. They're people that do service for you and me. And now we're pulling the rug out from underneath that. And that coupled then with this national trend for dividing the haves and the have-nots, that is just going to hit the state of Iowa like a ton of bricks. I want to read you what Nate Bolton put together. He says, some comments in the debate and since the enactment have led to misunderstandings. So he says, number one, the law is bad for Iowa's economy and really hurts rural Iowa. It does. Many rural Iowa business owners, including farmers, count on outside public employment of a spouse to make ends meet. Cutting workers' rights does not allow for greater local control, as Kirsten said. Number three, the new law does not exempt police, fire, and other public safety employees. First, many police officers and firefighters who work in employment groups where they make up less than 30% of the workforce are not covered by the limited exclusions of the new law. Four, it creates haves and have-nots in public employment. Five, it undermines our ability to offer quality public education. And six, it's bad for all Iowa workers and their families. This legislation did nothing to improve the lives of Iowa workers, but instead only takes away rights for public employees. Private sector employees have the federally protected right to freely negotiate over benefits, wages, hours, and other conditions of employment. Iowans who need and want qualified public workers serving their communities are going to be left behind as this law devalues the important work of each and every employee who answers the call of public service.
Thank you, Senator Mathis. I have a number of questions here on the Iowa budget and also the effect of federal government cutbacks on what's going to happen here in Iowa for WIC, Meals on Wheels, LIHEAP, all sorts of things. So if we start with Representative Running Marquardt, and if you could comment on the state of the Iowa budget and also the effect of these federal cutbacks on what's going to happen here in Iowa to folks.
And do it in a minute and a half?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how about an hour and a half? Would that be?
I don't want an hour and a half, but so the budget, so we have this at the state level, we have experts on Iowa's budget. They're a nonpartisan group. It's LSA, but they come together with a committee. It's called the REC and Revenue Estimating Committee. And they are the ones who sort of give us projections quarterly on what our budget is currently at, and then projections on where we're going to be in the future. They came back, and the budget is $113 million in the hole again. We just got done, it was just in the hole again, $110 million at the last one, which was a couple of months ago. So, and then we had to run our first appropriations bill through the process for that, and that's what ended up cutting community colleges, our regents, our universities, corrections, DHS, things that service some of our most vulnerable Iowans across the state of Iowa. What really is going on is what I like to call tax credits gone wild. Yes. Iowa's economy, it's a steady, slow-growing economy. But it's growing steadily. This year we've gone in the red 2 times, and it is because we have the issues on the backside of tax credits gone wild, uncapped, unchecked, unregulated, tax credits. Some of them are research and development checks. We don't even get to know what the research and development is for proprietary reasons. But then the state of Iowa just gives people big checks and says, here you go. And then we also have the backfill for the commercial property tax. And so we have this spending on the tax credit side and the spending on the research and development side and all that kind of stuff that goes unchecked, and we don't look at every single one of those dollars. But then we have on this side, Republicans have really mismanaged the budget because of these unchecked tax credits gone wild area. And now we're sitting at a place again for this current budget year, we're another $113 million in the hole. And I guess they're gonna try to take it from our rainy day fund or some other places. But I didn't even get into, I see my stop sign, so I've reached my minute and a half. I didn't even get to, I am deeply concerned. The Meals on Wheels program here in the state of Iowa, we are one of the few states of Iowa that does not add any dollars into feeding hungry seniors. And that is shameful. The money is pass-through money that we get from the federal government that does that. And then we have some local matches from some groups and organizations. But I am extremely worried. I know that I have a lot of seniors, not only in my district, but I care about my county and my entire state, that they are food insecure. And every day they depend on those volunteers and those wonderful Iowans who come with the Meals on Wheels program. And, you know, I don't see Mert Bowers here today, but God bless her. She's saving people's lives for years, rubbing two stones together and coming up with potatoes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So I'm concerned about that, and maybe some folks can get into that in their
Yeah.
minute and a half.
Thank you.
2
Thank you.
minutes.
Representative Taylor.
Goes this way, okay. Yeah, I would also add that, on the Meals on Wheels, every dollar, whatever it is, and it's reducing under the Trump administration, it goes to the food. The people delivering that is volunteers, and so it's about the food. This is the breadbasket of the world, the home of Norman Borlaug, the guy that saved 1 billion people from food insecurity, and yet we're gonna take that out on the seniors? What's the point of that? I don't get it. The budget, and just a note, it's 131 million that the REC talked about.
$25 million that they
Oh,
took back
thank you.
before.
Good point.
25 million.
Good point. Of those dollars, we can't cut any more in corrections and courts. We're already shutting down courts on some days, potentially, and taking away, and doing some layoffs, and they're all not gonna work on May 26th or something, as an impact for the third branch of government. The other thing I would say is, as Representative Running Markwart said, that the economy is growing slowly and steadily. One of the things in that is that we have historically low unemployment. But yet what the problem is wages. So what does the legislature do? They say, well, we can't have a minimum wage increase. We're gonna take that right away on the local level, which is a problem. And the commodity prices seem to be stabilizing, but yet we still have this problem. And part of the problem has to be identified in where has our spending been? And it has been in tax giveaways. And if those things don't translate to jobs, I think that we ought to have the clawback provision. They always say, well, give us this money, we'll create jobs. Fine, sometimes, as long as it's within our means. But the way they've done it over the years is taken away so much off of our balance sheet that now we're in the hole. And even with low unemployment, that's the problem with wages, even with the economy that is growing. So I think Terry Branstad couldn't be happier than this is happening, is he's not gonna have to deal with it. He's leaving. But, we can get into some more specifics if.
Thank you very much, Representative State.
Thank you. Back in 2013, a promise was made to you that if we had a huge tax cut, that wages would be strong and we'd have more jobs brought to this state, high-paying jobs, and that would offset any loss that we had in these tax credits. But today, approximately $400 million of tax income that would be coming in is no longer coming in because of the tax credits and exemptions over the years. And the Republican Party, I must say, this is partisan, they have so far refused to seriously look at reform in those taxes and see about caps and changes and so on to many of the credits and tax cuts that have been given. So without that, the budget remains a real problem. This year, as Kirsten mentioned, Representative Running Marquardt mentioned, we were short in the budget by $111 million. And one of the first bills out was to cut money to the judicial system, to DHS, to our community colleges and universities. You remember that? And that's the reason why tuition was going up and why the university was withdrawing scholarships. That was because of our budget. Now again, after the latest projections, there's a $131 million deficit that needs to be filled again. So how are they going to do that? Well, this time they're thinking about taking it out of our reserve funds, but it will definitely continue to impact all the services and agencies in this state until we get a balanced budget. A budget where we can provide the services that are needed in this state and collect the revenues that are needed to do that.
Thank you. Senator Mathis?
Yeah, I agree with what everything everybody said. You know, we've calculated on the Senate side that we will have, after we will pay back this money from it's called the Emergency Reserve Fund. After we pay back that money, and then moving forward, looking at FY18, we will only have $6 million of an increase to spread across everything, Medicaid, education, everything. So we've calculated even farther, and it looks like at the end then of FY18 and going into FY19, we'd be looking at a $231 million deficit. And that those are, it depends on who, you know, whose numbers you're looking at, because there are some things that we can calculate in there that might not be as high, some tax credits that are only used on a 30% level, but you budget at 100%, you know, so commercial property tax is not one of them. That's used at about a 95% rate. But some of the tax credits, you know, we need to go through one by one and say, you know, the usage of this is very low. Not very many people are taking advantage of this, and it's really not spurring our economy. It's a philosophy. The Republicans have told us if, you know, you cut commercial property tax or you give tax credits, it will stimulate the economy. Well, it hasn't. $400 million, you know, in tax credits, and and here we are cutting the budget again, another $131 million. It's not working. So how about if we do it our way the next time?
Thank you. We have lots of questions, and we're getting short on time, so we're going to try to move along here to, I have a bunch of questions on Medicaid, privatizing Medicaid, what's going to happen with managed care, what happens with all these cuts. So can we start with maybe Representative State and go that direction?
Thank you. Yes, referring to the MCOs, the transition here in the state, is that pretty much? Yeah, if you remember more than a year ago, when we talked about the beginning of this transition, I mentioned that it was a $2.4 billion program in the state of Iowa, and that the state was running that with overhead or administrative expenses of about 3%. And they projected that it would go from 10 to 15% in administrative costs. And I pointed out that that's at 10%, that's $240 million more that the state would have to shell out. So what we've gotten right now, we've got 3 companies that are running in the red themselves, they say. More state money going into this program. We have providers being squeezed, people denied services, payments delayed. It's still a colossal mess. So I wrote a bill back then to end this pain and to go back to the state system, and that was ignored in the Iowa House. I still think that there's opportunity for us to do that here in the state of Iowa and get control of it again. We also asked for oversight, and we have not had strong, effective oversight whatsoever. Most recently, I'm trying to think of the company, AmeriHealth Caritas, yes, they had 3-year negotiated 3-year agreements, and in the middle of it, after the first year, they're wanting to move back to lower payments to providers, changing case managers, and other issues. So the thing is continuing to unravel, and I don't know that we're going to get any changes with the current administration or those that control the House and the Senate.
Thank you. I want to move along quickly, make sure everybody can answer this question, and then we're going to be out of time. So
Okay.
we can move along. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. We also forget, the providers are owed millions of dollars still in these claims that are, I call them the dryer cycle. They keep going around and around, and some providers, many providers, still have claims that are due from last April. So we're coming up on a year, and they're very nervous about whether they're going to get payment or not. We also forget about the line of credit that many providers have taken out. Some owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest on those lines of credit so that they can keep their doors open and waiting for the MCOs to pay them. That's a problem. That is a problem, especially for nonprofit providers and hospitals. Can you imagine how much the hospitals are suffering from this? So one side of this that I think that you should watch is it's a group called Milliman, and they do actuarial work for the state. And they did the initial actuarial work when privatization was first enacted. Milliman met with DHS and IME about a week and a half ago to tell them their analysis of what's happened in the last year in regard to what should the rates be moving forward. So you're going to see some news probably soon about renegotiating rates for the MCOs, and will the MCOs then pass those renegotiated rates down to the providers? That's what we're going to focus on, and that's what I as a legislator will really, really push. Not so much legislatively, but behind the scenes.
Thank you. And before we get to Representative Running Marquardt, this is going to end up being our last question. So I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you, all the legislators, and then our cameras are going to turn off here in about 5 minutes. So if we can finish up with this question, I really appreciate it, and thank you all for coming.
I again thank you all for being here today and giving us a chance to share some information with you. I'll be here afterward as well. The MCO issue is critical because it affects somebody we know, somebody in your family, your neighbor, somebody, your friends, or somebody out there who this really affects. And it's quite unfortunate to Iowans that this is another case where, again, corporations have won out over Iowans. And this time, again, it's sick Iowans. We have not had any Medicaid bills. I've served on the full appropriations through appropriations, so I know I have maybe a half minute left. I didn't know if Senator Mathis did you have anything else to say about the MCO bill or proposed legislation that you might have seen in the Senate, because we have not seen it in the House yet?
Actually, Senator Reagan and I put a Medicaid Fix-It bill together. They did not accept it, but Representative Heaton is going to take it on your side, and he's going to cut it up and put some pieces into the HHS appropriations bill. He has told me that he is open to that idea.
Representative Taylor?
I can't add too much to what's already been said, but I do think that when the governor pushed this idea, we were sold a bill of goods. He said we were going to save money. We didn't save any money. More and more people, the seniors, the frail, and folks that are in permanent circumstances that aren't going to change, that they can't just snap out of it or pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. It isn't going to change, and we need to be there as a society. And he promised us that savings, and it isn't coming. And so we need to continue to change. Again, I would thank everybody for being here one more time, and just remember November 6, 2018.
We just have a couple of minutes left here, and I want to just tell you, we've got lots of questions here. I think the legislators will stay around. Some of them can stay around afterwards to try to answer your questions. If there's some are saying yes, and I hope that you can do that.
Yes.
Planned Parenthood, guns. How do we contact our representatives and make our voices heard? The environment, traffic cameras. How do we grow Iowa's economy? You're all great in asking these questions, and I appreciate it. In the back, there's information for the League of Women Voters. There's a pamphlet there that has all your legislators' names and addresses and emails in it. So please pick up one of those. If you'd like to join the League of Women Voters today, you can. I think they could sign up back there, couldn't they, Myrna? Yes, they say yes. So I appreciate that. Thank you all for coming. And the next forum will be April 15, is that correct? It's the last one for this year, so we hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
I was experiencing